revelation, reason, and empirical knowledge as sources of knowledge. They accept reason and empirical knowledge as sources of knowledge, but they deny revelation as a source of knowledge, whereas we affirm it. And this is the fundamental difference between atheism and Islam. Okay? Right. So now we can see what sort of world conception, what sort of ideology these atheists advocated. What was their ideology? How did they approach the world and knowledge? So their basic premise was what? Rejection of revelation, which they saw in the guise of Christianity. Okay? Rejection of religion, which they saw as a force of backwardness, as a force of supporting, rich aristocrats, which they rejected, right? And so it starts with what? Atheism starts with negation of revelation as a source of knowledge. Okay? And that becomes manifest in society through secularism. Right? Since revelation is not a source of knowledge, they will argue what? That a society that is enlightened cannot be governed by religion. It has to be governed solely by the other two sources of knowledge, which are empirical knowledge and reason. So our conception of cosmos, our conception of our own existence must be exclusively based upon those two sources of knowledge. And that will guarantee what? Objectivity. Right? So if we can agree upon reason and empirical knowledge as our source of knowledge, this will lead to an objective approach. And if this objective approach is what? Is accepted by society as a whole, we will have progress. Right? So these concepts are what? Are key to the secularist, atheist, materialist approach to life and the universe. Rejection of revelation, belief in the objectivity of empirical knowledge and reason, and believing that adoption of these two sources of knowledge exclusively will lead to objectivity, which will lead to progress. Okay? Now, progress is, since it is believed to be an objective phenomenon, has to be accepted by everyone else. So this is another, this leads to another key component of modernity and secularism, which is what? Uniformity. Since the secular, materialist understanding of the cosmos is objective, everybody has to accept it, and everybody has to follow this enlightened paradigm and has to achieve progress through adopting these sources of knowledge. Okay? Now, the issue is, as you all know, human life is quite diverse. Human cultures and civilizations are diverse. So, what if people don't want to go with this enlightened paradigm? Okay? In this case, the answer of modernity has been what? To basically eliminate any opposition to this uniformity. How has this been done? As we'll see soon, it has been done through various means, among the most prominent of which has been the surveillance state, propaganda, and genocide. Through using these means, secular and modern states have tried to produce a uniformity in their societies and in the world. Now, if you look at different secular conceptions, we see that although they agree on the factors that I mentioned, they disagree about what to do after that. Meaning, if you say reason and empirical knowledge should be the exclusive sources of knowledge, that will tell you certain facts about the universe. But it won't necessarily tell you something about how you should act in that universe. Right? In other words, we can answer, they have an answer to question, what is it? but there has been no consistent answer to the question of what should we do about reality. So you had multiple different secularist competing ideologies that try to define what the goal of human life and human society should be, right? Among these have been what? For example, nationalism. Nationalism as a secularist idea is what? That people should not live in رَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمِ الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. He is the one who taught by the pen. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Right? So his akramiyya, his karamah, his generosity, and his ennoblement of humankind is explained in the verses as how? Through the teaching of knowledge. So, sorry. Okay.
Sorry. Good.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
So, knowledge is the greatest blessing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to humankind. And it is through this knowledge that we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is through this knowledge that we have our iman. And so, I thought that before we start talking about atheism, that is kufr, it is more befitting that we start with something more pleasant and more beneficial, which is iman. And you'll see where I'm going with this pretty soon. So basically, our iman is based upon our knowledge, and so to understand our iman, to understand our deen, and to understand kufr, we have to understand sources of our knowledge. What are the sources of our knowledge? So we basically have three sources of knowledge. What are these sources of knowledge? These sources of knowledge are revelation, reason, and empirical knowledge, meaning knowledge that we obtain through our senses. Okay? So each one of these sources of knowledge provide us with knowledge. And so our conception of ourselves, our conception of our Lord, our conception of the cosmos and our existence is based upon the knowledge we obtain through these sources. So, what is it that we learn through these sources of knowledge? We believe that our iman is based upon these sources of knowledge, and that iman has to be based upon knowledge. In other words, we do not think that anyone should believe blindly. Rather, every Muslim should believe based upon knowledge. And based upon this knowledge, we should know what our iman is. So what is our iman? Our iman is affirming and confirming the message that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final prophet, has brought from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Affirming it with our heart and confirming that with our tongue. That comprises our iman, our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And how is this going to be based on knowledge? We should be able to justify this faith based upon our sources of knowledge. So, what do we say? There's this series of ayat at the end of Surah Al Imran that the Prophet ﷺ used to read during Tahajjud time, that beautifully summarizes our justification and our proof for believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. What do those ayat say? They say, Estaizu billah, inna fi halki samawati wal ard wa ikhtilafi al-layli wan nahari la ayat li ulil albab. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, there are signs for those people who are mindful. Who are the people who are mindful? Impartial people. People who are fair, people who are not stubborn, they're not arrogant. They start with an open mind and impartially and fairly think about the nature of our reality and our universe. Okay? So, what is the first and fundamental proof of God's existence? The one and only God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is our existence. Meaning, where does existence come from? Right? We know that this existence is created. We know that nothing that exists currently is eternal. So, since this cosmos is created, it must have a creator. Inna fi halqis samawati wal ard, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, there are signs for those who are impartial. Now, not only is the heavens and the earth, are they created out of non-existence, but they're also created in such a beautiful and graceful manner, right? With amazing regularity, with very precise patterns. So this is indicated by the ayat, وَاقْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, in the alternation of night and day, right? The alternation of night and day is such a great blessing for us, right? It enables human life, and it is just one instance of one example of the regularity and the harmony of the universe, which makes life, all life and human life possible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only created the cosmos out of nothingness, He also created in such a fine-tuned, graceful, harmonious, and beautiful way, right? So in these, there are signs for people who are impartial. As regards, so this is basically our belief, the foundation of our belief in the existence of God, that the cosmos is created and must have a creator, and that creator is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As regards prophethood, what is our approach to prophethood? We say that if basically someone makes a claim, he has to prove it. Right? Somebody makes a claim that is not intuitive, they have to prove that claim. They have to justify that claim. Right? So when a human being claims that he is the messenger, the prophet of the one and only God, what do people seek? People seek a corroboration of this. What is the corroboration of this? The corroboration of this will be in the form of a miracle. Right? Since Allah created the cosmos, He has the power to change how it operates. Right? So when somebody claims to be a prophet and Allah corroborates his claim by changing the way the cosmos works, that is sufficient proof for people who are impartial that the claim of that prophet is authentic. Okay? So the Anbiya alayhimus salam have been given miracles with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has corroborated and authenticated their claims of prophethood. Of these miracles, the greatest miracle was given to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How so? If we look at the miracles of the previous prophets, they involve extraordinary acts, right? Such as in the case of Musa alayhi salam, Moses, his staff turning into a serpent, the parting of the Red Sea, so on and so forth, right? In the case of Isa alayhi salam, we have the resurrection of the dead and other such miracles. So these miracles are extraordinary acts that happen in time, that have happened and have finished. All right? So because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him and us with a miracle that remains and that will remain until the day of resurrection. Okay? What is that miracle? That miracle, as you know, is Al-Quran Al-Karim, the most noble Quran. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ as a miracle, and he underlined and emphasized its miraculous nature by saying, if you think this is other than from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring something like this. And whom did he say this to? He said this to the people who were proudest of their language in the world. There has been no nation in the history of the world that we know of that is prouder than their language the way the Arabs were of their own language. How do we know this? You look at all the great civilizations of the world, and you will see that they all accept religions that have origin in something other than their own language. Right? For example, the Greeks were an ancient civilization that had many worldly accomplishments. The Romans was a great empire, right, that had many accomplishments. But they happened to accept the religion of a prophet who spoke in Aramaic, right, namely Christianity. You look at Chinese, for example, ancient civilization. They accepted Buddhism, which came from India, right? You look at Persians and Turks, for example, other, peoples who established long-lasting empires. They accepted the revelation in Arabic, right? So they each accepted a revelation or a religion other than their own language, right? Now, interestingly, the Arabs were so proud of their language that they would not accept a religion that wasn't in their own language, right? And they said that if it was not Arabic, they wouldn't accept it, which was the reality until the Prophet ﷺ came, right? So the proudest aspect of their civilization was their language, and they loved their language to such an extent, as you know, they hung their poems in Arabic on Kaaba, so on and so forth. Those poems are called muallaqat, the hanged poems, right? And so then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to show conclusive proof to a people, He has given the prophets miracles in those aspects in which those people thought they were the strongest in, right? For example, the Egyptians considered themselves superior in magic, right? And Musa alayhi salam overwhelmed their magic with his miracles, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam the Arabic Quran, with which he overwhelmed these people who were the proudest nation in the world concerning their own language, right? He said, this is Arabic, this is clearly Arabic. If you think this is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring something like this, right? And the Arabs were completely incapable. They accepted the miraculous natures of the Quran in the sense that they admitted that it was inimitable, right? And this is not only for the Arabs. This challenge is open to the whole of humankind, and not only to humankind, even to the jinn, right? That if the humankind and jinn were to come together, they would not be able to come up with anything that is similar to the Quran. And not only is this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also foretold this, right? He said that bring something similar to this and you will not be able to. And it is true. A fact that you can all observe. Do any of you know anything similar to the Quran? I don't think so. There is nothing like the Quran, right? So it's a book that speaks for itself, and it's a book unlike any other book. So that was the miracle with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala authenticated and corroborated the claim of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be a prophet. Okay? So through this we try to illustrate that in our religion, in our understanding, in our epistemology, sources of knowledge are what? Revelation, reason, and empirical knowledge. And through observing and reflecting upon these sources of knowledge, we come to the conclusion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, that He is one, He is the creator of the cosmos, and that He has sent prophets in His mercy to guide humankind, and that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final message. Okay? So now, with that brief introduction to our sources of knowledge and to our iman, we can switch to the other topic, which is atheism and its emergence and its spread in the modern world. Okay? Where does atheism come from? And what is its occasion? What occasioned atheism? How come it is spreading, so on and so forth, right? So when we look at atheism, we see that, first of all, it is a historical anomaly. That for most of humanity, in most of history, it was very intuitive that the cosmos is created and it must have a creator, right? This is to such an extent that as late as the 18th century, the Scottish philosopher Hume says, "I've never met an atheist in my life." Okay, and he passed away in 1776. So the period of atheism, which is, as I said, a complete anomaly in human history, is basically starts around 1789, the French Revolution, and has continued until today. Some have argued that it has reached its heyday and that it's on decline since 1989, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, when communism, which adopted atheism as its official doctrine, began to collapse and crumble. Okay, so basically the prevalence of atheism has occurred in the last 200 years. For most of human history, everybody found it intuitive and natural to believe in the creator of the cosmos. So, interestingly, the word atheist was first used for Socrates, and he didn't deny God, he believed in God. But what did he deny? He denied the official Greek religion of Athens, and that's why he was accused of atheism. Interestingly, Christians were accused of atheism for denying the official Roman pagan religion. But atheism at that time did not believe in denying that the cosmos is a creator. It just meant, right, denying the official religion, basically. Okay? So we have atheism. How do we explain that it becomes such a powerful intellectual force in Europe in the last 200 years? It's a very specific set of circumstances that led to this, and it's the combination, I believe, of two main factors. One factor is the scientific revolution, and the other factor is Christianity. Now, these two combined together paved the way for atheism. How is that? Basically, starting with the 16th century, you had what's called the scientific revolution that started with Copernicus. Right? Copernicus argued that the Earth revolved around the sun rather than the previous conception that the sun revolved around the Earth, the geocentric conception. He argued for a heliocentric conception where the Earth revolved around the sun, right? And then afterwards, other scientists argued for this position and corroborated and furthered his model, such as Kepler, who figured out that the revolution of the celestial orbits was elliptical. Galileo, who corroborated Kepler's theory with astronomical observations. And then you finally had Newton in the 17th century, who worked out the laws of gravity, worked out the orbits of the planets and the physical laws governing that. And so you had basically, in these centuries, an explosion of scientific knowledge, right? That is called the scientific revolution. So at the same time, there was such a great increase in scientific knowledge in Europe. You also had what? Christianity. And Christianity was seen as what? As an obstacle towards science, as an institution that was interested in serving the rich, the aristocrats, the kings, and not concerned with the concerns of the common people. And basically an outdated institution that advocates an outdated understanding of the universe. So this combination of a Christianity that was seen as backwards and subservient to the rich ruling classes, and the explosion of scientific at the same time motivated people to turn away from religion, which they saw in the guise of Christianity, and to turn towards science. Okay?